Hi everyone, welcome. Today we will be discussing a custom solution for the retail industry where we will be looking at GL detail, P-card transactions, and using store attributes to improve planning accuracy and analysis. My name is Jasmin Hester. I'm a senior consultant with Archetype Consulting, and I've been in the consulting space for about 3 years now. Prior to that, I was on the industry side in finance and accounting for about 10 years. I'd like you to please join me in welcoming our OneStream experts for today, my coworkers Andre Bermudez and Ben Thompson. Andre, Ben, would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Hi, I'm Ben Thompson. I've been in consulting for a few years now on a lot of different OneStream implementation projects. Prior to that, I was introduced to OneStream actually on the client side in corporate FP&A. We were used to, other products. We found out about OneStream, implemented it there, and fell in love with it ever since. So, been using OneStream for about 8 years now. So, prior to consulting, did corporate FP&A, leading FP&A departments for about 15 years with different large organizations. Andre?
Yep. Hi, everybody. Andre Bermudez. Been in the OneStream space for about 5 years now. Prior to that, spent about 12 years in the Hyperion EPM space, HFM, planning, FDM, the traditional EPM infrastructure space. And prior to that, kind of spent a lot of time in FP&A. So it was the natural progression of FP&A to maybe being a little techie and playing with macros to system administration and now into OneStream.
Playing with
Nice.
macros. Admit it, you did that in high school, didn't you? That's what you did for fun.
We'll make fun of
Yeah.
Excel then. So in today's webinar, we will show you how using store attributes in financial planning can help businesses make smarter decisions and run more efficiently. Retailers often face challenges like handling renovation schedules, tax differences, and varying costs for different locations. And by automating data collection and using this information in forecasting, companies can move from slow manual processes to working much faster with data driven decisions. This approach gives finance teams and business leaders more accuracy, flexibility, and control. In the end, it helps businesses improve profits, adjust to changes very quickly, and get better insights into how each location is performing. So, to start out, Ben, could you discuss with us the different types of industries and organizations that this solution could be relevant for?
Yeah, I know we titled it retail planning, right? But you can almost kind of think of it of anything with stores and locations. So whether you're looking at, grocery stores, restaurants, convenience stores, even like go-kart tracks or anything, right? Where, something where you have a store that might have different products in different locations.
Yeah. And I mean, on top of that too, I think you can start to extend it outside of like your traditional brick and mortar locations. I think it starts to become, relevant even for places who do online versus in-store type information, right? What does the consumer place orders on the phone or on the web page? I mean, these are all different kind of attributes that can kind of get utilized for, decisions that need to be made and how do you want to adjust your business to kind of like, economic factors.
So, for retailers with hundreds or even thousands of locations, managing store level details can be very complex. Andre, why is store attribute management such a critical part of financial planning?
Yep. So if you think about it, and I'll try to stick to a more traditional, maybe brick and mortar model where you have different locations, but each location is like a specific, almost like its own business, right? It's going to have its own drivers that that impact margin and your bottom line. So it's important to kind of get that detail and be able to extrapolate kind of and adjust your business to those economic factors. Does square footage of your store impact your revenue? Does the cost of shipping, certain product to one location versus the other, impact your profitability? Foot traffic, you know what I mean? Do you have more local competitors? Do you not? All these things factor into kind of in making, decisions on how you want to operate.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah. In addition to the revenue and kind of COGS planning of all of that, right? From my FP&A background, I always look at it from a reporting aspect as well. And you always want to kind of compare, like, okay, I want to compare the stores that have these similar attributes. So, with store attributes, you can pull that from the system to say, okay, here's a store that's very similar to the other, and how those compare, whether you're looking at gross margin or net margin or anything like that. So these store attributes can make it a lot easier to do a lot of those same store comparisons to really evaluate your business and make improvements from there.
You want to make sure you're comparing apples to apples, essentially.
Exactly. You
Gotcha.
just summed up, 5 minutes of Andre and I talking in one sentence.
Really good at summarizing. So OneStream does have 8 user-defined dimensions that are available for use. Andre, could you explain why something like store attributes could not be satisfied using UDs?
Yeah. So if you think about kind of having to manage something in a hierarchy, we're talking about data that's frequently changing. So it could be difficult to essentially manage that in a hierarchy. I'll use a sales org, for example. You might have a regional manager who has district managers below him, and then maybe some other managers that are below those regional managers. And maybe that workforce is always kind of being reorganized and shifting due to whatever kind of conditions you have. Attributes makes it easy to kind of pair, like, hey, I want to look at Ben's sales team and I want to look at the stores that have, square footage of over 1,000. It makes this type of reporting makes it really, really easy to do that kind of analysis.
Well, I'm glad you're going to look at my sales team because it's the best, man. They have the best numbers. But looking back at some of my prior, roles and things like that, I kind of look at it as, if you have a store, let's say that's in Pennsylvania, well, that might not change, right? So maybe a location state could be in a UD. That's something that's not going to change, and you have a limited number of inputs. Versus like in my past, there's been a lot of project management or different contracts that they're working on. So you might have hundreds of new contracts each year and hundreds of contracts that complete and finish. So something like that, you don't want to manage in UDs because it'll just bog down your system with maintenance requirements and, a lot of data in there that you don't need, that the store attribute solution can be a much better solution for.
Fair. Makes sense. So retailers often have different store formats. Some of them are full-size locations, while others might operate as smaller, more specialized stores. Andre, how does this solution help retailers measure and improve store-level profitability?
So again, you kind of go back to the example of being able to measure attributes, as you said, kind of apples to apples or fruit to fruit, right? So when we look at these examples, right, kind of spent a little bit of time in an auto glass, in the auto glass industry, where we had different locations throughout the country, but some of the locations essentially had locations with multiple garages where they could do work in-house, and some of them did not have any garages where they'd have to always send techs out into the field in order to kind of do work. So this kind of allows you to measure your stores appropriately to say, hey, if I can do X amount of volume in-house, then I don't need maybe as many techs. I don't need as many vehicles. So it starts to maybe impact your CapEx investment. So I think, it's really, really important to kind of get into that little bit of detail to kind of define what you want your business to look like.
Yeah, that's a great example. And one example that came to mind when you asked that question for me is Chick-fil-A. So we have a Chick-fil-A near our house, opened years ago. We got to know the manager when he first opened. And he went to Chick-fil-A and said, hey, this is the location I want to open my Chick-fil-A, but it can't have a drive-through. And Chick-fil-A originally was like, no, can't do it. No way. Have to have a drive-through, right? They do so much business through their drive-through. Well, it took him over a year to prove another solution, right? Where they could do like reserved parking spots out there that they could bring the orders out. They could take them there, or you could order on the app and have it delivered to those parking spots kind of thing. It took him over a year, but he finally got it approved. And ever since that Chick-fil-A opened, it's one of their busiest locations. They've just done great with that. And so they've seen where, oh, okay, here's a store attribute. They don't have a drive-through. So how would that compare to other stores that don't have a drive-through? Because since then they've opened more, right? Now you can kind of get that apples to apples comparison based on an attribute like that.
That's fair. I've definitely seen some Chick-fil-A's now that have the parking spots. They might also have a drive-through, but they now also have the numbered spots. You can pull in, get what you want, and they'll bring it out to you.
Yeah, why not? If you can have both, right? Even
Exactly.
more revenue.
Much money in the same amount of time.
Exactly.
So updating store attribute details across a large portfolio sounds like a very large effort. How does this solution automate that process, Ben?
Well, thinking of a recent project where we did this, they had all of their store attributes in a separate system because that system, the sales teams might access it for one reason, operations teams might access it for another reason. But rather than manage it in a whole separate system, right, and worry about those two getting out of sync, what we did is we just set it up where OneStream would import those store attributes. So they could just go in there and click a button anytime they wanted to update store attributes. It'd go out, pull in all the attributes. It would be active, live. Both systems would be in sync, kind of thing, so that any of their financial reporting or store reporting, operational reporting, things like that would be using those same factors.
So many retailers sell a mix of products, whether it's clothing, groceries, electronics, home goods. How does this solution ensure that accurate forecasting across different product lines?
Well, I look at when I think of like the different product lines and product mix, right? Take, for example, one of my favorite gas stations, Bucky's. I don't know if they have them near you, right? But it
I don't
started
have
in
them.
Texas. Yeah, I guess they're everywhere in Texas. It's kind of working its way up East Coast, right? Like,
Like a
I think
Wawa.
for yeah, but a lot bigger,
Okay.
like a Bucky's, when you pull in, there's literally over 100 different gas pumps. There's a separate section for electric charging vehicles, separate section for like diesel 18-wheeler trucks. There's car wash, all this kind of stuff on the outside. But then when you go inside, there's whole different sections, right? Like they have a whole wing that's almost kind of, you can think of it like a small Starbucks, right? It's not just like all your snacks and everything you can buy, but they have merchandise, and t-shirts and cups and gifts and all sorts of stuff. They have like a small restaurant that has all this, some made to order food, others that they're just making and it's basically selling as quickly as they're making it. Really known for some of their barbecue and things like that. A lot of people love the barbecue and will go there for that. So, I always try to stop at a Bucky's when I'm going down the highway, and it's a good place to get gas. But the point being is that, they have such a diverse product mix, and each of those would have different profit margins. Each of them you would plan differently and approach differently, whether you're doing the budget or the forecast, right? So you're going to really kind of look at the units sold and the margins and everything else like that, product by product.
Yeah, I mean, to piggyback off of Ben's example with Bucky's, it's like, it seems like we have a common theme to talk about food, but we'll
Why not?
continue with
That's
we'll,
what we get for doing this before I eat. I'm hungry.
yeah.
What can I say?
But when you start to look at the business, right, and regionally, I'm sure Bucky's was in the South, right? But does their Texas barbecue sell as well? And as they start to move northeast into the Carolinas, right? Does it cost more to make it a certain way that's more applicable to the region that they're going to be selling in? So, when you think of store attributes, it's really important to kind of get into those details to be able to analyze your business and kind of see what's driving it, either up or down.
Yeah, good
Yeah.
point. I mean, North Carolina is all about their vinegar-based barbecue, right? Not their sweet base. So,
Yeah.
Sweet barbecue is not good.
really? Oh, come on. I love the sweet barbecue.
Not my preference. It's just not my
It's all,
preference.
it's all about the corn. It's all about the cornbread. Let's not.
That's a good point as well. So I'd like to switch gears a little bit, guys, and talk about how integrating P-card transactions and GL level detail into financial reporting can dramatically improve efficiency and decision making. Many organizations struggle with limited access to detailed expense data, which makes their variance analysis and budgeting very challenging. By centralizing P-card and GL transaction details, organizations can have a streamlined process that keeps teams very focused on their strategy rather than chasing data. So to start out, Ben, could you explain exactly what a purchase card or a P card is?
Yeah, you can think of, I mean, a lot of people are familiar with purchase orders, right? You're operating a department, you need some kind of supplies for it. You have to fill out a purchase order. This is kind of the old school, and maybe I'm dating myself a little bit, right? But then the purchase order would have to go through all the levels of approval, get approved, and then you could order, and that supplier would bill you for those attached to that purchase order. A P card is just kind of like expediting it a little bit. It's a purchase card that basically you can use kind of like a credit card to buy those supplies without having to go through, the length of a purchase order and the longer process.
Yeah, kind of what Ben said. It's a credit card. Right.
Long story short.
And I'll date myself even more, Ben. I remember the the things where you had to kind of like the impression of the credit card, right? So that's
yeah,
more old school, right?
Exactly.
I had to use those once, and it was because all of the power went out on the entire street, and we were the only restaurant that had power, so we had to use the little slider for the credit card. So retailers generate thousands of transactions daily. I understand that you guys built a custom solution to allow users to analyze lower level general ledger and company purchase card detail without actually loading it all into OneStream. Ben, why was having access to transaction level detail such a critical need for this?
Yeah, the big thing is, right, because you look at OneStream, it's kind of corporate performance management, right? You're going to use that to, close for the month. You're going to put your financial statements out in it. You're going to do your planning, your forecasting, all of that kind of stuff, and strategic analytics around that data. You don't want millions of rows of detail clogging up the system. So typically data is imported at a higher level into OneStream, not only for system performance, but just also you don't need all that low level detail in there. So that's really kind of the focus of OneStream, but there are those occasional instances, right, where you want to look at the detail that you're like, okay, great. I understand that this, there was $10,000 in this general ledger item or whatever for the month, but what comprised that if you have to explain it? So that's kind of the genesis of the solution, right, of how we can get that data into people's hands when they do need it.
Gotcha. And Andre, what are some of the struggles that department heads tend to face when they're trying to get the transaction details that they need?
Yep. I think, not specifically to this client, but at many locations, it's the data doesn't always live in the same place, right? When we talk about, right, your CPM solution might be at a more detailed level, and then you have your GL detail, and then essentially your P card information lives somewhere else. So a lot of times, department heads have to go to accounting to get information, and Ben's on vacation for like the third time this year, so
Yes.
I've waited 2 weeks in order to kind of get my information so that I can complete my budget and figure out what how I need to plan appropriately to do that. But he's holding me up. So I think this solution did a really nice job of kind of giving the department heads like the ability to kind of just look at it all in one place.
Saves a lot of time, it sounds like.
Definitely. So I can go on vacation again.
Exactly. Fourth time. So Ben, how did this solution bring purchase card and GL details together in one place?
So basically, if you look at it, right, we created a dashboard in there. And like I said, you don't need all of that data living in the system. So what this dashboard does is when you first go in there, you can select the department. So let's say I'm department 100, Andre's department 500. Well, from a security standpoint, you don't want me looking at his department's expenses or vice versa. So the first thing you do is select the department. Once I do that, I select department 100. I'm going to select the time frame that I want and then click to import all that data. And what it does is it's going to go out and it's going to pull into this dashboard. Like the bottom section of the screen will have all your GL postings for that month. Some of those postings might say like, hey, it's a P card, it's a purchase card, right? Well, you might need to know more information about that. All of that was stored in a separate banking system. But with this solution, you can just click on that row where it shows the P card. And then right up above, it's going to show any details. And sometimes it's multiple purchases, right, that make up that thing. Plus any comments that was done like on the expense report or from the bank statements, anything like that. So you can get all the data available right there, just like at a click of a button.
Sounds like it's going to save a lot of time simply for the fact that I don't have to log into several different systems and pull out my cheat sheet of passwords.
Definitely.
So let's talk some more about the benefits of implementing this solution. How did it improve things like variance analysis and the workload on the operational side of things?
Well, big thing, right? Variance analysis is, at least my experience most of the time in FP&A. Sometimes you have a month, let's say, hey, I was supposed to have $10,000 of expenses in March. I pull it up and it's 22,000. Like, wait, what the heck? How am I going to explain that big of a variance? So now I can go into it, I can click on the data, I can see exactly what was posted in there without having to reach out to accounting or look into different systems or whatever. Maybe I see that, oh, this expense that originally was going to hit in April actually hit in March. So that 12,000 overage isn't a big deal. It's just a timing difference, right? Like, sure, it hit in March, but now April is going to be $12,000 less than originally planned. So it really kind of helps explain those variances.
Yep. And even going forward, that kind of it'll help with your budgets going forward, right? You can look at the detail, the GL detail, and analyze charges that may or may not happen in the next year, right? So you're able to use that information not only for your variance analysis in the current year, but going forward from a planning perspective, you're able to see, hey, you know what, this charge actually belonged in Jasmin's department. It shouldn't even be in mine, but it was happening all year. And because the GL detail was just populating, I just assumed it was mine. And, now I have the ability to go ahead and,
Drill down.
dig deep into that and drill that down and see what's in there. Yep.
Great idea, Andre. That helps your budget too, right? Because then, just transfer all your expenses to Jasmin.
Make everything my fault. So, Andre, although this solution was implemented for a specific retailer, could you discuss how these same concepts could be applied to other companies and different industries?
Yep. So every company is going to benefit from having the ability to look at the detail. This is not retail specific. I can't think of a company that we haven't dealt with that does not have a purchase card. Purchase cards are becoming more and more common. Small, medium to large business. It's just a common thing, and more than likely it's going to be in different systems. It's not always going to be in the same system. So being able to integrate this and drive a lot of like accountability and ownership to the department heads. They could never say, hey, this isn't my budget or anything like that. They have the data, they have all the visibility into it. This solution helps to kind of streamline the process and drive ownership and accountability, into their budgets and variance analysis and all that.
And see, while Andre was going first, I was hoping to stump him and come up with an example where it wouldn't work well, but I couldn't think of one either. I was like, I mean, he's right? Like, I'm looking at the past, like, different companies that I've worked for, whether they're value added resellers, managed services, government contractors, hospitality industry, retail, all this kind of stuff. It's like, there wasn't a time where having access to that data when I needed it wouldn't have helped. So,
Yeah.
I totally agree with Andre. Like this, it's not just a retail solution; it's any kind of organization solution.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't even think of any time where I've had either a company card or a corporate card, wherever. If I wanted to see any kind of detail, the only way I was getting that is if I logged into the credit card website or the bank website or had someone else do it for me, which, like you guys said, then takes more time because I have to wait for them to respond because they've been on vacation for the fourth time in the year.
Yep.
Exactly.
And I think the really big piece around that is being able to layer the security around it. I think that's what Ben touched on before is it's really, really important, and the fact that we can do that, that's a big win too.
Yeah, I don't want Andre to see that I got 4 times the budget he did, right? Then he'll say it's not fair, all that kind of stuff.
Starting office brawl, we don't need all that. Well, as we wrap up today's discussion, I'd like to thank you both again, Andre and Ben, for taking the time to dive into this solution with us. If anybody has any questions on the topics that we discussed today, please feel free to reach out to myself, Andre, or Ben, and we look forward to hopefully working with some of you in the future. Once again, thanks for coming today.
Great. Thank you.
Take care.